Good morning. Today we are going to start a combination of chapter 10 and chapter 11. We're going to kind of pick and choose what we want to do through this. I usually combine these two when I'm teaching in the classroom. Sorry, if you can hear Tom in the background, he's laughing while watching. He's laughing while watching the show. Okay, so today's are the topics that we're going to cover. We're going to cover energy, work, and power. I kind of abandoned teaching some equations through chapter 8 because they were just really difficult. And I didn't think you'd be able to, looking at some of the stuff we were trying to do. The chapter 8 equations were a little difficult to do online teaching. Uh, Chapter 10 and 11 equations are like multiply these two numbers together. So we might do a little bit of math with this chapter. So we have energy, work, and power. The first topic that we're going to cover is we're going to cover energy. Energy is when something produces a change in the environment. All right, so it produces a change in the environment somehow with whatever system it's working in. There are three different types of energy. In chemistry, we covered radiant energy, and uh, and what we're going to cover in physics is also kinetic and potential. So we'll take a look. Yeah. All right. So radiant, kinetic, and potential. All right. The first one we have is radiant. We did radiant energy last year in chemistry. I don't know if you guys remember doing like the colorblind test, things like that, because it was part of the visible light spectrum. Radiant energy comes from the sun. All right. So when someone says you have a radiant smile, it means, your smile is shiny. It includes parts of the electromagnetic spectrum. And maybe once I list them, maybe you'll go, oh, yeah, I remember those. So the parts of the electromagnetic spectrum are gamma, X-ray, ultraviolet, visible light, infrared, microwaves, and radio/TV. We're not really going to cover radiant energy with this chapter, but I just want to let you know what they were. Okay. The next type of energy, and you can always pause this to get caught up. The next type is kinetic. Kinetic is the energy of motion. All right, so the energy of motion. There are like a couple of different examples of kinetic energy. For those of you that are athletes, there's kinetic warm-ups and there's static warm-ups. Kinetic warm-ups, this is when you do like your arm circles, when you jog, when you do lunges to stretch. My volleyball girls do bear walks, Frankenstein kicks, things like that. So kinetic is moving, getting these parts moving. So if we think about things that contain moving parts, cars contain moving parts. So an example of kinetic energy is mechanical. All right, so mechanical energy is an example of kinetic because it requires parts that are moving. Thermal energy. All right, so thermal energy, that's like when you're cold and your body shivers, right? And your body moves to warm it up. Or maybe you're cold and you're rubbing your hands together, all right? So you're moving and that's causing the particles to step. So that is an example of kinetic. Sound energy is an example of kinetic because those sound waves are moving. And the last one that we're going to put in here is we're going to put electrical. I'm going to put a star beside it because electrical energy is going to go into both categories. So an electric current is moving, right? So it's, when you flip the light switch on, you've completed the circuit and the energy is moving through, right? A bunch of these energies, these are like, if you want to go on to become an engineer, this is like your mechanical engineering, like your electrical engineering. So a lot of engineering courses are based off of different types of energy. All right, the last type of energy is potential. Potential energy is the energy that is stored. All right, it could move eventually. And with potential energy, there are some examples. One is gravitational. All right, so gravitational energy. This is hold on. You might hear gravitational potential energy, as referred to as GPE, gravitational potential energy. The best example of this is if you have seen a Wile E. Coyote and Roadrunner cartoon. The moment where Wile E. Coyote runs off the cliff and he kind of just hangs there for a brief second and then he falls. That brief moment of hanging there is gravitational potential energy. So that's GPE. All right. Next is elastic potential energy. So whenever something is stretched, like a rubber band, like a spring, what else? Like an arrow. So whenever you're stretching something and then it kind of flings and it goes back to its regular spot, that is an example of elastic potential. So that brief moment before it kind of springs back, it's not moving. So therefore, it is potential energy. The next type of energy is chemical. All right, so chemical potential energy. This is the energy that atoms contain right before they enter into a chemical reaction. So maybe I have a piece of magnesium metal in a test tube, and in the other test tube, I have hydrochloric acid. As soon as I mix them together, there's a brief moment where they are not reacting. And that is the minute that their bonds are being formed. And that is chemical potential energy. We put it on the last one, but this is electrical. So we said electrical is kinetic when the current is moving. But if your light switch, if you're sitting in a room right now with your lights off, the switch is not, the light switch is preventing the current and the circuit from being closed. All right, so an open circuit, it's not flowing through. A closed circuit, you've now allowed the energy to flow through. So electrical can be both. And the last type of potential energy is nuclear. So kind of, once again, that brief minute before the reaction takes place, that is nuclear, and that's potential energy. So What we're going to do today in your lesson is you're going to watch a Wile E. Coyote and Roadrunner cartoon, and you are going to list and try and find, and maybe there's examples for all of them, maybe there's not. You're going to try and find an example for each type of energy. All right. So maybe I already kind of gave you the hint. The moment where the coyote falls off the cliff and he's kind of just hanging there motionless, that is gravitational potential energy. So I'm going to challenge you to watch the cartoon. You can watch it as many times as you need to. Is to complete the doc and try and find an example for each type. Maybe you can't find an example. Maybe there's nothing mechanical. Um, machines really don't exist in the world of Wile E. Coyote. So you would just say not present. Um, so that's your assignment for today. I think it's pretty low key, pretty easy. You get to watch a cartoon. Hopefully, it'll make you laugh. Um, and and Looney Tunes tend to also have really great music. I think the one we're going to watch is called Chariots of Fur, based off of the score Chariots of Fire from the movie. You can go down that internet rabbit hole if you want to. All right, so that's your lesson for today. Thanks for being patient with Tom in the background.